Outside? Is that a good place for me to sit or wait outside?
You can sit over here, yeah.
You want to tell me?
Lord, please no.
Give me the bat.
Too much.
I see you join us, my friend.
You're good on the Zoom?
Yes, sir, we're live.
Okay. Trustee DeWitt, do we have you on the audio on the Zoom?
Mr. DeWitt is not in the Zoom meeting.
He's not doing it?
No, sir.
Okay.
He hasn't joined.
We'll see if he does later. Okay, we're now going to call to order this special meeting of the Bay City ISD Board of Trustees. Pursuant to Governor Adams' temporary suspension of open meeting laws issued on March 16, 2020, and consistent with new state and local mandates on public health and social distancing, the special meeting of the Bay City ISD Board of Trustees will be held in the boardroom at the H.J. Counselor Administration Building. The meeting will be audible to the public at the link provided. The quorum of the Board of Trustees will be in attendance in the boardroom, and members of the public may attend the meeting in person, subject to the following health and safety precautions. Attendees must socially distance. If you wish to submit comments or review by the Board of Trustees regarding any agenda item for this meeting, those should have been emailed to the Superintendent's Administrative Assistant. Comments submitted and received by 5 will be shared with the board. Okay, we're going to jump right into it. And so, item 2, discussion of Lenny Roberts School Memorial Plaque and graphics. And I'd like to say that we had the privilege, Trustee Robinson, Trustee Tim, myself, Dr. Scott, Marissa, and a few others, Grant joined us to walk through the Lenny Roberts Elementary building. Very pleased, they've made a lot of progress, it's looking really beautiful, I'm excited for our kids and our teachers that get to go there. So, also joining us was Ms. Cheryl Roberts-Owens and her son Harrison. It was a pleasure meeting them. We got to take the plaque, the actual size plaque, and walk it into the building and put it on the wall where it should be. Looked around, talked about some different options, and so tonight we're here to address 3 items, hopefully that we can get clarification on the location of the plaque, the biography on the plaque, and the construction of the plaque. So the material that the plaque is going to be and the photograph and that sort of thing. So I'll open it up for discussion, but the first item that we can address is the location. And so after looking at where it was originally supposed to be, it was a very huge giant wall that goes way above the ceiling, and it was squeezed in by a walkway above it, so you actually had to make sure you were really close to the wall to see up. And then Principal Wendell turned around and said, well, why don't you just put it right here? And so it's going to be proposed that it is right in the vestibule, not to the left where it was originally planned, but to the right. It'll be right next to the window where you check in with the administrative assistant. So if the administrative assistant has to run and do something, you have no choice but to read the plaque and look at beautiful Lenny Roberts plaque and read about the history of it. So I'd like to make a motion that we Well, I'll leave it open for discussion or any other comments before I ask for a motion or make a motion.
I mean, after seeing it in there, it makes sense to put it right above the window and check in. It's a great spot.
And I agree too, that it was a perfect spot for it. It got lost on the big wall, that we talked about, at the last meeting. I'm looking at it today and really putting our eyes to it. It didn't work. The wall was huge and it just didn't look good. And, thanks to, the principal at Roberts, and she looked at it, and Cheryl, and, something, her son, and we all agreed that right there, by the window was a perfect place for it, and, looked really good right there. So I agree, with everybody that was there, that was perfect location.
Trustee Robinson, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that, the location right there by the ticket, the registrar's, office spot would be the perfect location for the city Roberts, place.
Motion has been made by trustee Robinson to place the William Roberts Memorial plaque in the vestibule to the right by the window. Is there a second for a motion?
I'll second.
Second motion and second by trustee Westmoreland. Is there any further discussion? And this is pleasing to you?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay. Next, we'll move on to the biography. And so at the last meeting, we had the original biography, we had a modified biography, and then we had conversations with Ms. Cheryl Owens, who wanted to see a few changes, some wonderful additions, and then the subtraction of the letter E in her name. And so the board didn't have a problem with this, but we didn't vote on it because we didn't know the location of the plaque. Were we gonna need a bigger plaque? So were we gonna have to use the original bio or what we're gonna do? But with the location of it there, I'll open it up for discussion, but I think it was acceptable to have a modified biography with these suggestions, and we'll make sure that the architects get the suggestions. Did you get a copy from this meeting? Is there any discussion about the bar? Is there a motion to be made?
I'll make a motion. I motion to adopt a modified biography for the plaque at William Roberts
With these changes?
with these changes.
Motion's been made by trustee Westmoreland to adopt a modified biography with the changes suggested by the family. Is there a second to her motion? Trustee Robinson has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? And that is pleasing to be all as well, correct? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask our architect Christina to join us on this next conversation, and we're gonna be talking about construction materials and different types of plaques and that sort of thing. But you all have a packet there, and so the last thing we're really gonna decide and try to get some guidance on is metal plaque versus glass plaque. I think we all agree we wanted a portrait, and so we'll get that passed, but there's different types of portraits with different plaques and styles, and so, Christina, floor is yours.
So page 6, numbers are on the top right corner.
Linda, do you have another copy? Okay, you go.
That one, this we can pass around. It's a weird time to be passing things around. Basically, there's the option, as it was mentioned, that it can be metal or cast, metal plaque, bronze. There's there's different tones to it, but the typical is just going with brown, so it's gonna be a brownish, kind of a yellowish color. We can go with a picture in it, that's a low relief picture, and it will look like a normal photograph, but it will have a slight texture to it. Because of the quality of the picture, we cannot do etching, because we don't have a big quality for it. So we're limited in that sense. The other option is going with the glass, black. With the glass, you can go with like an artistic profile that can be etched on the glass. That one can be, because it's a different process. And then you can also just put the photograph in there if you just want to use the picture that we already have. Both options will look very great in there, but I would like your input on first.
Like a feedback.
It's going to change if I was a person.
Sorry.
But yeah, in your sheet there, you'll see the three options if you go with a metal flag, the glass with our artistic profile, or the glass with photograph. And in the following page, you'll see an option on the top for what it looks for the low relief, that it creates some slight shadow and you'll have some texture. The metal cast flag, the letters will look at how it's struck in the second image. And then the photographs you can do with the black and white or full color, the image as we have it. And the glass can be clear or it can be frosted. So those basically are the options on the flags.
I personally think the glass plaque on page 6, that last one, I know the family had requested that we actually use the picture and not etch. And I think that one, just in the space that it's going to be in, I think that one would be very clean looking and it would look very nice in that first area, and it uses the picture as well.
You like, which one you like the last one?
Yes.
The last plaque
Original picture.
with the original picture? Full color, it's an old photo, but it's colored, use the full color photo,
The original picture.
the original picture. Any other comments?
I would probably say frosted, just so you, just so
So you
it's
have
not,
a background.
you have the background.
contrast.
This is frosted.
Yeah, I think it needs to be frosted.
Any other conversation?
Make a motion. I'll make a motion. I motion to accept the glass plaque that is the frosted version with the color picture.
Motion's been made by trustee Westmoreland to have the Linda Roberts Memorial plaque as the glass plaque frosted with the original photo. Is there a second for motion?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by trustee Murray. Good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes 6-0. And I think we have ourselves a memorial plaque, so. All right. Thank everybody for the hard work that we have putting all together. Thank you, Ms. Roberts, for joining us this evening and supporting the building with us and letting us meet your wonderful son, Harrison. Thank you.
We appreciate it. And I'm very pleased.
And y'all drive safe. And we'll see you soon. Okay, item 3, discuss and possibly approve scheduling a 2-day Lone Star Governance Workshop. Our presenter is Tony Williams, Region 3 Leadership School Improvement. Tony, it's been a long time, and we missed you. We're glad to have you back. And the floor is yours.
Well, it's very good to be here face to face, and I gotta say, it's, hope y'all don't mind that I don't have a mask on right now, but I'm loving it. I'm sure you all got, or you feel the same way. Looking forward to next year, with anticipation. Hoping that we're back to what police staff. I don't want to say normal,
Thank you for being a drive safe.
Thank you.
So yeah, what I'm here to talk to you tonight about is Lone Star Governance. How many of you have heard of Lone Star Governance? Okay, very good. So you may have different views of it depending upon who you talk to or who you've seen that has delivered a message about it. But my experience goes back 4 years ago. I actually attended a Lone Star Governance workshop with about 5 different districts down in Corpus Christi, and I've been working with one of those districts since that time in different capacities at the Region Center. And I've seen that district go from an F-rated district to a B-rated district. And that board, largely, of course, it's the great work of the people in the schools, the principals and the teachers that make all the difference day in, day out. But they credit that leadership that they've gotten together through Lone Star Governance as helping them turn the corner, keeping an eye on things and moving things forward. So I'd like to do this with a little bit of a discussion. And I'd like to start out by just asking you as board members, what is the most important thing to you as a board member or as a district leader when you think about Bay City ISD? What's the most important thing?
Just making sure that our students have, the very best educational experience possible.
Great. I think it's equip our students with the skills and the knowledge necessary to become not just productive adults, but, world changing.
I think it's equipping the staff as well.
I would agree, it's the students and staff, and continuing the trajectory that we're on. We've come a long way, and to continue to go forward in that.
Yeah, you really have. Any other thoughts?
It comes down to making it set up where the students can get the best out of their potential and out of their resources, and giving the staff the support they need to make that function a possibility.
Excellent. So here are some things that some would say are important to them. Motivating students and staff. Some of the things that you said right there, those are definitely all important things. So what's important to you as a team of 8? Maybe not just individually, but as you've worked together. I know we've got some new board members, and congratulations, by the way. That's great. And but as you've worked together, what have you seen as important to you as a team of 8?
Communication would be the top, and just being able to have this critical, conversation with each other. Because we know we're not going to agree on everything, but we can have this conversation, so we may not agree.
Be respectful, listen to each other, good. And what else?
Having a shared number one goal that we're all striving to, one target, not 8 different targets.
Good. Very good. Respect. Excellent. So yeah, as a team of 8, those are certainly good goals. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus a little bit more, because some of the things you mentioned might be considered what we would call in Lone Star Governance other outcomes. Now there are a lot of outcomes that you as a board are responsible for. There's the budget. There's taking care of your facilities. There's what happens during the fall on Friday night. Let's face it, we're in Texas, right? It matters. There's just a whole lot of outcomes that you are overseeing. But the most important and most critical outcome is student outcomes. And that includes what they know and are able to do. That's why schools exist, to improve what students know and are able to do. And that's what Lone Star Governance helps you to achieve. So when we think about student outcomes, and just about anything you work on, isn't going to change until the adult behaviors change. The adults that are actually working to see good things happen. So in Lone Star Governance, these are the things that we do. We support you. We will define what it is, and then what we provide. So what we do is through the 2-day workshop and then the coaching experience that follows that, we support that adult behavior change in board members and superintendents, in communities and in the leadership team. And what it is it's a continuous improvement framework. And so really, it doesn't come in and replace your curriculum or your staff or any of the things that you have going on, which we taught you were called inputs when we did the evaluating and improving student outcomes training. Those are the things that the management brings to you, your instructional materials, your instruction, things like that. But it's a framework, and it's research-based. It provides coaching support and then quarterly evaluations of you as a board, as a team leader. And that's important. And it's going to provide you with tools and templates to monitor things. And then it gives you access to systems that align to the state and local initiatives. For HB3, for State Board of Education training rules, communication, and other TEA initiatives. And I was telling Dr. Scott before the meeting that I was in a meeting, a workshop yesterday, and they were going over all of the commissioners' new initiatives. And and I had to laugh because in the middle of all of this list of initiatives, my watch told me that I needed to breathe. So probably all you guys up here, you principals, you feel that way every day, right? And I know Dr. Scott does. And so we keep getting new initiatives. But what this does with Lone Star Governance, it helps you focus, it's like Mark said, on the main thing, which is student outcome. So right now, there are 82 districts out of a little over 1,000 in the state of Texas that are Lone Star Governance districts. And so when I started working with this about 4 years ago, I think there was a handful, 5 or 6. And so I've actually been involved with a few districts in Region 3 that have embarked on this journey of Lone Star Governance. It's affected over 1 million students in the state of Texas so far. So we've been able to collect some data on these students and the districts and be able to see how they have progressed in their student outcome goals as compared to other students in other districts. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get any data this last year because of COVID. So what I'm going to be sharing with you is some data from comparing 2018 to 2019. And we'll take a look at that. So these are all of the training requirements that you as board members have. And so Jill and Matt, you're trying to wrap your head around your new training requirements, and they're pretty hefty at first, and we're going to help you through that. But you can tell by just looking at this list that many of these things can be taken care of by a Lone Star Governance coach as you work through. So it's like you have somebody right there with you that can help you with a lot of these different training requirements. So who does research give credit to for the greatest impact on students? Who do you think? Who do you think the research shows makes the greatest impact on student outcomes? Our teachers. Teachers, okay? I would have to say you're right, it would be the teachers. But what you're going to see in this research, this is the research that underpins Lone Star Governance. And while it doesn't say that teachers aren't the most important element in a child's education, what this research does show is that you as a board have you make a difference. You make a big difference in the student outcomes. And that's what the research behind Lone Star Governance shows. What it tells us is that school board behavior impacts student outcomes. And I guarantee you all of these people that are sitting up here that work in the school every day, they'll tell you the same thing. Because what happens in the boardroom echoes right down into the hallways of the school. It affects the teachers affect the kids. And so when you're working together as a team, and you've got goals, and you're stroking along together, and everybody stays in their lane, then great things can happen. It doesn't mean you're going to always agree. I like what Trent said. Sometimes you're not going to agree, but you're going to agree to disagree. You're going to vote with passion, you're going to vote your heart, and it may come up that it doesn't go your way, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, when you walk out of here and that vote has happened, and if it was 4-3 and you were the 3, when you walk out here, it's just like it's 7-0. Because we're a team and we're going to work together And over time, that whole situation could change. But you impact student outcomes as a team of 8. You definitely do. And here are some of the reading that you could do. And you all have copies, hard copies, and then we sent you electronic copies of this too. So you can actually click on the links in this PowerPoint, and it'll take you to different places where you can look at the research for yourself to see what is behind Lone Star Governance. When we went through the training to be Lone Star Governance coaches, we were tested actually on all of the research to be able to show that we can identify where it came from. So what research-based behaviors can school boards take to improve student outcomes? Well, here you go. It's all right here on this graphic. Basically, it starts with you as a superintendent, you as a team of 8, creating synergy together, working together as a team. Now, when you look in the middle there, you see visions and goals, values and progress and accountability. That's what you as a board member bring to the table. You bring the vision and goals from your community to this table. And all of you might bring a little bit different perspective, and that's good. That's why there's 7 of you. Then you all have different values. Probably a lot the same, but maybe some of you have different values. That's good. And then you all have expectations for your school system. And you want to have high expectations. And so what that's going to lead you to is in the system, in Lone Star Governance, what we do is we take those visions and goals and we help you to set goals that are reasonable. And I think districts all across the state are going to be looking at their goals again, their 5-year goals after COVID, and after they can take an interim assessment in the fall to really establish a good solid benchmark. Because a lot of kids have been out of school, right? So those testing numbers that we have right now, they're great, many, but they might not be 100% accurate because we had some kids that didn't test. Then, duty with your values through the system, the Lone Star Governance framework, we help you identify the non-negotiables. And then a system of progress monitoring is set up so that you can actually, month in and month out, you can monitor your progress of your kids. And so what happens is at the beginning of the year, we sit down and we design an assessment calendar. And we look at when we're going to assess for the different goals that you have. Just benchmark assessments. And then we create a calendar and give it to you so that you know at which board meetings you're going to see the current benchmark results on those goals. So you're going to be able to keep up with how the kids are doing if you enter into this full scale and you go forward with Lone Star Governance. So the whole point of this is to improve student outcomes. Now, if this was professional football, you're not the coaches, okay? He's the coach. He's the head coach. You hired him to be in this position. That's his job to call the plays on the field. But you're up in the press box at the 30,000-foot view, right? And you're the one who has to make big decisions and follow the lead of the coach, right? So when you work together, great things can happen. But it's not your job to do the job of the coach, right? That's his job. That's how all of this works together. And with Lone Star Governance, it helps you to keep that frame of reference and keep stroking along as a team together. So when we think about what impacts adult behavior change, it requires knowledge, it requires skill. But the most important thing is mindset. And if our mindset is right, and you can see this in teaching. You know, I was a teacher, then I was a principal, then I was a superintendent. I wasn't born one day and became superintendent the next day. I taught for a while and I really enjoyed it. And a teacher's mindset makes a huge difference. If you believe that you have the skill and the knowledge and you can reach that kid, you can help them learn how to convert a fraction to a decimal, then you can do it. You'll stay with it until that child can do it. And if you don't have that mindset, you can have all the knowledge and skills in the world, and you might not achieve your goal. So Lone Star governance definitely impacts adult behavior change and helps create a positive growth mindset. And that's what it's really all about. So what do boards spend most of their time on in board meetings? What do you think? What have you experienced in the past? Especially when you have a bond.
It's almost about the mask.
About the mask?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do boards spend time on? You're not unique. I mean, look at board agendas across the state. Everybody's.
We do a lot of budget work during budget season, we do a lot of superintendent evaluation every year, 2 months out of the year. I mean, there's a lot of busy work that is important, each has its own critical piece, but we don't dive into student outcomes as much as we probably like.
Yeah.
Just building the schools is probably, talk about.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of time. When you have a bond going and you're doing construction, that does require a lot of time. But what I'd like to share with you is a graphic here that illustrates that the amount of time you spend in a board meeting talking about student outcomes actually affects the outcomes. And this is a graphic that represents 31 districts that were high engagement districts. These were districts that engaged in Lone Star governance in a full sense, okay? And this is data that's taken between the years 2018 and 2019. So the green bar on the right shows those that were spending between 25 and 49% of their time in board meetings talking about student outcomes. The one that's in the yellow is districts that spend below 25% of their time talking about student outcomes. And the state overall averages there on the left. So you can tell that districts that engage in Lone Star governance do better. Now we just have a little bit of evidence. We don't have hundreds of districts. We had 82. This was based on 31 of them that were highly engaged in Lone Star governance. I personally have been working with a district this year, and I've attended every one of their board meetings. We met back in the summer, we planned their assessment calendar, we set the goals, the board did it, but we show up every month. Right now, since August, they are at 51% of their board meetings. I timed the board meetings. 51% of their board meeting is spent on student outcomes. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about looking at the data and interacting with the staff, with the administrative staff about how things are going. And we feel like it's it's already making a difference. They've gone from an F district to a B district, and we've set a goal in 5 years for them to be an A district. And the way things are going, I don't see that they're not going to meet that goal. So it really can make a difference, because what it does is it keeps you off of all of that wandering that can happen, talking about the color of the paint or here or there, or things that might not matter too much, compared to looking at student outcomes. So when we think about measuring performance, why do you want to know how your teachers and your administrators are doing in their jobs? Why do you want to know?
Well, if they're doing a great job, you want to tell them they're doing a great job. And if there's areas for improvement, we want to be able to equip them with the resources to make those improvements.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on that? So, I know Dr. Scott has got all kinds of systems in place to evaluate instruction, to help teachers to grow, to evaluate the administration, and to help them to grow. And so all of that's in place for them. And it's interesting that when you look at your board policy, and I pulled this up out of your board policy and copied it into this PowerPoint, it says that you are to have an annual assessment of the development of the needs as a corporate body and individually to gain an understanding of the vision, structure, accountability, advocacy, and unity needed to provide educational programs and services that ensure the equity and excellence in performance of all students. And so I asked Dr. Scott, I said, well, how often do you do a board evaluation? And he couldn't really, I believe he said you didn't remember when you did. So the superintendent gets evaluated, all the staff gets evaluated, but there hasn't been a board evaluation. And you're not, like I said, the things we're talking about, this is everywhere, okay? It's not just Bay City. This is, in my district, when I was superintendent for 11 years, do you know how many board evaluations we did? None.
Only we hold one every year in May.
Yes, that's true. That's true. It's called a board election, right? And so, yeah, that is true. But what this does, I want to show you one page out of this Lone Star Governance Integrity Instrument, it's called. And so when you're a Lone Star Governance district, every 3 months, every quarter, you do a board evaluation. And so all board members look over it. It's about a 10-page document. It's got these different divisions in it, and you look at it and you come to consensus as a board as to where you are, and then you get a score. And the idea is to get your board over 60 points, because if you're stroking over 60 points, you're doing pretty good. Well, the district I'm helping right now, last quarter, they were at 58 points. So we've taken some actions, and we think this next quarter in June, that they're going to probably be over the 60 points for the first time. But that's a big hurdle, and that's a lot of things that have to be done to come together. But it's nice to focus on that, because it's like Mark said, when we're all moving together. You know? And, I'm sorry? No, it's an evaluation of the whole board that you all do. There's different ways you can do it. We've done it where they did it each individually, and then we came together and compiled it. And then this time they want to just all sit in the room and do it together. And they know the instrument so well now. I think we can do it in about 30 minutes. When you start out, it's a little rough because you don't really know the instrument as well. But there's a lot of value in it. And it's something where you have a lot of open discussion about your work as a board. And so it is very good. So now boards who monitor their behaviors, this is interesting. When you look at the data on these districts between 2018 and 2019, you see the ones on the green. Those are the districts that were highly engaged in Lone Star governance, and they did the quarterly evaluation, and they scored a 60 is green, 60 or above. If they were in the yellow, they scored below 60. And then the state overall average for accountability was the blue. So you can tell that districts who engage and boards who clearly evaluate themselves by these standards, the students do that. And that's what the results of these 31 districts show. So how do we monitor our behavior? How do you change behavior? Listen, it's a cycle, isn't it? So our habits and our experiences affect our mindset. Wouldn't you agree with that? Our habits and our experiences affect our mindset. Our mindset then affects our behaviors and actions. And our behaviors and our actions affect our results. That's what determines our results. And then it's just a cycle. So where can you change that in that cycle?
Habits and experiences.
What do you think? I heard somebody say habits and experiences. Yeah, habits and experiences. But, during COVID, we learned some new habits. It's going to be interesting to see how we come out of it, right? But habits are difficult, and what's the best way to break a pattern or a habit? It's really to have a good coach work with you. And I think all of you that have been in athletics, or you've been a musician, or anywhere you've had somebody coach you. Just recently in my job, I had one of our supervisors, I was having trouble getting a group of people to write strategic goals. They wanted to write SMART goals. We're doing strategic planning, and it's at a high level, right? So we don't use SMART goals for strategic planning. But I could not get them to write the strategic goals, so I brought her along, Mitzi McAfee. She went with me, she sat in the back of the room, she watched the whole thing. And after it was over, she goes, okay, look, next time, what you do, she kind of walked me through the process of what we do. So I had another district in the next semester that I worked with, and I did exactly what she said. I had better results. I used that same method this year in another district in Ganado. Tremendous results. Had she not been sitting there and coaching me, I don't think I'd have come up with that on my own. You know? And that's why coaching makes such a difference. It really does. It can help us to break habits. So, with the engagement of a coach, you can see these 31 districts. If you look at the change from 2018 to 2019, just in their ratings, there were 3 that were F districts, 7 that were D districts that went, and look at the numbers, how they progressed. The ones that, they went up to 12 C districts, 16 B districts, and they stayed at 3 A districts. And look at the numbers of kids that were impacted. A ton of kids were impacted by that. And I think you can't really see it. There's this thing here blocks it. Let's see if I can move that over. Yeah. Look at that. 486,506 kids have better experience. Now, that's if we believe that state accountability really does show that kids are learning more. That's if we adopt that. But honestly, the STAR test and the end of course test, those are designed to determine if we've taught the TEKS. And I think they're a pretty good assessment of that. Not perfect, but it definitely helps us to have something to look at. So when we look at the deliverables that we bring in Lone Star Governance, here's a couple of things that we do. We do the 2-day workshop. And the 2-day workshop is definitely good. There's a challenge piece to it where you are challenged in your thinking a little bit. You learn all of the components and all of the, about how the system, the framework works in your district. And then if you engage in continuous coaching, then you have somebody to come in the district and work with the leadership team and the board to help keep things between the ditches, you know, as far as Lone Star Governance goes. So these are the things that we do. It's kind of the cycle of the year. There's mapping at the beginning, starting at the top right, and then we do goal setting. And this year, since HB3 goals are already set, you would just look at revising them after you have the fall testing. And then you set constraints, which you don't have yet. With ISO, you just set HB3 goals. And then you would set up a monitoring calendar, and then determine how you're going to use this information in your leadership evaluation with your superintendent. Because there has to be a component of his evaluation that has to do with student outcomes. And so many districts will use this. That's up to you, though. And then you have your monitoring reports, and then you look at your consent agenda. You try to take as much off the agenda, the big discussion items, and put them into consent that you can stand. You know, so that you can really focus on student outcomes. And that's the point of it. And then you have two-way communication and advocacy with your community. And then finally, you're moving the needle to the master's focus area with your evaluations every quarter to the point where you are ready to start the next year. So I've kind of given you a brief description of what it's like. And do you have any questions for me?
When can we start?
Well, we can definitely set up a 2-day workshop for you.
The 2 days, you come to us, here.
Yes, so the 2-day work, most boards like to do it like on Friday, Saturday, and we start at about 8 o'clock in the morning, go to 5, and it's pretty intense. There's a gentleman by the name of Morris Lyons who works currently, well, he works for TEA, but as of today, he is now going to be the executive director of Region 3. So he's been with TEA for about a year. He's been a superintendent for 16 years. He's my TEA boss. Okay, he oversees Lone Star Governance. So he does the workshop with me. We co-facilitate. And it's an amazing, dynamic workshop. We did it for Victoria. The Victoria ISD board in January. And they really enjoyed it. So Yeah, we can set it up for the summer, I just have to work with Dr. Scott and get some dates that work for you. And we would have to determine if you want to do it just yourself, and maybe with one other board member from another district. Victoria has a newly elected member who's looking for a place to join in, because she wants to get her training up to date with the board. Kennedy ISD is also wanting to schedule a date, so we could do it where we all went together. But, you know, I'd like for Dr. Scott to lead y'all in the discussion, decide if that's something you just like to do yourself, or if you want to have others do it.
Like the two-day workshop is broken down into several segments that total to be 24 hours of guidance or structure, education, however you want to call it. But you said it was 2 days from 8 to 5. So are there other times where y'all come in and provide
Oh,
more?
I'm sorry, Mark. Yeah, that cycle that I showed you, that's what the coach does over a period of a year. That's where the coach engages. I'm sorry, I should have made that more clear. That's where the coach engages with the district. If you choose to do that, you know, after the 2-day workshop, you don't have to have a coach. Research does show that if you do work with a coach to help you, that you have better results.
Right.
But, you know, you can go through the 2-day workshop and manage it yourself too. So,
Do you know of any team ever that does not have a coach?
yeah, there's some that go through the 2-day workshop.
Well, that's for this, but any successful team out there.
You're gonna, well, I have some,
Anything,
there,
right?
the
They all have
the success is not gonna be as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, the success is not gonna be as good without a coach.
And then so is there different packages, like, is this something that we're paying for already and we just choose to receive it, we pay more?
The 2-day workshop, we provide, you know, all the materials and everything, and it's for you as a leadership team. There's 8 of you, and if you want to include your central leadership team, you can, and it's $3,000 for the 2-day workshop. If you engage a coach with Region 3, then all of those services amount to $7,000 for the full year. And the coach would attend as many of your board meetings as possible, meet with your leadership team ahead of every board meeting where the calendar is going to be reviewed, help you plan in the summer, help you work through issues during the year. But I can tell you from this year, my engaging with the district I've been, they're definitely getting the next one.
Right, so you be our coach?
More than likely. Yeah, I'm the only one at the region center that's doing this. Morris will be here soon, so.
So you're saying 7 and 3, or 7 in total if we?
It's a total of $10,000. Yeah, so it's $3,000 for the 2-day workshop and $7,000 for the coaching. For the-
How does it structure in a year segment? So you go through a full cycle in a year, and then you start the process kind of over redefining goals.
Yeah, the district I'm working with now, they've had, this is my first year to actually coach them. They had other coaches in the past, and so they've been doing it for 4 years.
Do you find that the people that are continuing to do it have to get refreshers on the 2-day workshop, or do you build that synergy into
Yeah,
this
so like-
process where we kind of know what we're
Okay.
doing?
Mrs. Lingle and Victoria that just got elected over there, she's looking for a place to fit in. She would have, her district would have to pay $400 for her to attend your workshop. So that's how that works.
What's the advantage of letting someone else in? If we're a team of 8 and we're on our conversations focused around our district and our dynamics, and then we have another conversation about another district in the middle of it all, I mean, what would the advantage of being let someone else in?
I tell you-
Of course, just to have us.
Well, okay, in the way it's posted, for one thing, it makes a difference. If you have people from another district come in, it's posted as a regional workshop. And that brings different circumstances than having a local workshop. Another thing is, I've seen it done with as many as 4 districts. And the dialogue just gets better because you have more people chipping in. There's a lot of interaction. I would say what I did here tonight, even though you were asked questions and things, this was more sit and get. Lone Star Governance 2-day workshop, it's all about you. And the more of you there are, the less you have to be the main one engaging. You know? And it's just interesting to hear what other districts are dealing with and hear the opinions and expressions of other board members from other districts. So I've observed 4 different Lone Star governance workshops, and every one of them has had more than one board. And even with Victoria, we have representatives from a couple of different other boards that were there. And it was nice and engaging. But that's a choice I can make. I would just, work with Dr. Scott. He knows all the ins and outs of how it's posted and what that brings to you, the advantages and disadvantages, so he can help you with that.
I also think that's where the coaching comes in, is the coaching is directed specifically to us. That's our board working with a coach, whereas the actual 2-day training, it would be nice in some aspects to probably hear from other boards, like you were saying. And then our one-on-one stuff happens with the coach, and that's where it gets real in the nitty-gritty.
That's right. Very good. That's right. It really does help you keep focused on, because when you're scoring yourself every quarter on how much time you're spending talking about student outcome goals, it challenges you. When you see your scorecard. And
So I'll jump in here. Tony, I've been pretty quiet tonight. But to trustee, can I call you trustee, Jim? I'm gonna put the trustee in front of it. Third point, engaging with other board members in the training and this process will give this board a different perspective on what's going on out there. A couple things. One, I think you will find that there are some things that are unique to this school board only, but I do believe that you will find that a lot of trustees are going through the same things that we are here, and along with a team of 8 as well. So I think it's a good idea if we venture out and do the 2-day training with another school district, just to hear, the different perspectives, and then we all, maybe the 16 of us, can just, have one big sigh, and then just know that it's not just us who's in this boat. Other people are actually experiencing the same things that we are. And again, give us a different perspective on what's happening out there, and also allow us to share some of the practices that we've actually had here in the district along the way. Just my perspective.
yeah, and after you've been through the 2-day workshop, you'll know better as a team if you want to engage coach or not. If it's a road you want to go there. And I would wait until then to decide.
I'm a Tony fan, I'm a big Tony fan, and I'm also ready to get into this. Just listening to you talking about the governance and the evaluation portion of it, we do need to talk more about student outcomes. Because right now, we have spent a lot of time on things that are important, but the big components that we really need to focus on from this point forward is student outcome. And I'm ready to get into that, but I'm also ready for this part. So I'm a Tony fan. So I think we need to get started on this. Like you said, with Dr. Scott, and if it's tomorrow that we need to get started, and tomorrow we need to start. We really need to get into this.
So, Tony, one more thing for me, and whether we go along with another school district or not, Trustee Sennett and I, just a couple of summers ago, attended a workshop, and if you recall, we sat in it, and you had 6 to 8 people presenting about their school district, and I couldn't tell who's the superintendent, who worked in central admin, who was a board member, because that's how involved and engaged they were in their student data, and that's how they knew it, and not just the student data, but the district's performance as well. And I think we both left that meeting saying, wow, this is what we're looking for this is what we want, and I do believe that Lone Star Governance will help us frame those behaviors that you're talking about and get us there. It's just being reflective to go.
I agree with you. I was in this board meeting last month with the board I've been working with, and we were in a discussion about some data, and one of the board members said, no, Mr. Williams, I think you're wrong. I think it's, we do have that, and if you'll research, we did do that, and she named the whole, I can't remember exactly what it was. And so I made some notes, and I went back to my office, and sure enough, she was exactly right. So at the next meeting, I had to, say, okay, trustee, you were right on the mark. Thank you very much. Yeah, so it does make a difference. Now, I would like to say to the principals too, that this does not mean that the board's gonna be doing your work. Because when you hear about this at first, that's my first rattle out of the box. I heard the gentleman from TEA that used to oversee it, and I thought, man, that doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they're gonna try to run the district. And that's not it at all. I mean, what it is they're setting the bar, but they're doing it knowing what they're doing and having an active part. They don't want to do your job. They just want to do their job and set the bar, and then you do what you do. That's important.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Dr. Scott said, man, that's why, just, for instance, just going to these conferences in the summertime, I feel like the board members are so important because I don't really know how else to say it, but you don't know what you don't know. And so if you just sat on this board, this is all you know. I'm not saying this is a bad board, but you get to hear from these boards that are, exemplar on board that you strive to be. And that's, like I said, you don't know what you don't know until you see what a team of eight could be. Potential.
Dr. Scott, you need a motion on this one to approve this, spending this money, or can we all just agree that?
Making the motion to say that the board is going to take,
I would say if we're going to spend the money, I've had a conversation with Dr. Scott about Team of Eight trainings in the past, and that not every board member comes. And so if we're gonna say tonight that we're gonna spend this money, I think we need to make every effort on our whatever to be at this training, because it does. I mean, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. So if we're wanting something to change in the district, we have to put our first foot forward and make the effort and show up no matter what. So I'm happy to spend the money, but I think we all need to agree that we will find a day for everyone to be sitting in that room together to do it.
Yeah. And we're flexible. You just tell us when you want to do it, and we'll try to make that work out to your schedule.
Does it have to be consecutive days, or can it be consecutive Fridays, can it be consecutive Wednesdays?
It's best if those 2 days can be right back to back. Yeah, it's best that way.
Is there any board member here who cannot commit to 2 days for Lone Star Governance? I know I'm putting you on the spot there with that, but.
I need reasonable advance.
Yeah. You're saying that.
Not next week.
Yeah, ma'am, my wife tells me the same thing. If you're gonna schedule one of those Lone Star Governance things, I need reasonable advance.
This program goes all year. I mean, if we find a date in September that works, is that, or we try to do it in July or August?
Absolutely. I would suggest trying to get it in before the middle of August, because if we could get started, I'm assuming you may want to have coaching done too. And if you do, I'd like to get that started before the school year starts and get a really good plan and involve these people and, have a, that would be best. If you wait too long, then we're behind the eight ball.
You got 6 parents on this board with kids in the district, and summer vacations are not gonna be at the same time, so.
I understand.
This is something we can coordinate, Linda, because they're, that's it.
We'll just put some dates out there that a couple of us can go, make sure everybody else can go, and we'll find it down until we find 2 days that everybody can get to go.
And if you really get into this and you like it and it's working for you, you're gonna have elections in the future and you're gonna have new board members. That's where, just like the one in Victoria, she's looking for a place to get In Victoria, we actually had one member, his son got COVID, so he was not able to get out and go. And so he had to miss it, but he went down to Corpus and got one. That's not the best. It's best if you can all be together.
So I'll make a motion to move forward with Lone Star governance training.
Motion's been made by trustee Jill to approve scheduling the two-day Lone Star governance workshop. Is there a second or a motion? I'll second. Motion's been seconded by trustee Tennant. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to thank the board for this commitment. I really do believe that this is going to be beneficial to us, not to you all, but to us as a team. So, thanks, thank you. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, and I'll work with Linda on getting the dates. And everything. So, thank you very much.
We'll start working on those dates right away, so we can make sure it's on a couple. And I'll call trustees away after the meeting and just kind of fill in on what tonight was and make sure we're giving this and getting involved in the conversation on scheduling. Thank you. Tony, drive safe. Thanks for coming to visit us.
Yes.
That's down.
Okay, item 4, Bay City Independent School District 10-year district-wide enrollment project and demographic study. Our presenter is Corey Burbach with Cooperative Strategy Executive Director, Southern. Corey, how are you? Did I say your last name correct?
You did, perfect. Sorry about the mouthful there.
Look at my name.
Well, good evening to the board, superintendent, district staff, and community members. As mentioned, my name is Corey Burbach, based out of Austin, Texas, with Cooperative Strategies. For those of you who aren't familiar with Cooperative Strategies, and it's a lot of you, that's been down before, we're a K through 12 facilities strategic planning firm. And so we help districts across the country, and I focus here in Texas, help develop their long-term facilities plans. And as a component of that, we've got a team of demographers who assist districts with developing their 10-year enrollment projections. And I have a presentation we can go over tonight. And so for you all, with Bay City, we were able to work with your staff in developing a 10-year district-wide enrollment projection. And what that means is we project enrollment based off grade level. Oh, sorry about that. Guys, you can set up for me. So when we look at what a district-wide enrollment projection is, it looks at projecting the next 10 years by grade level. So it doesn't break it down by school level or attendance, but or school residence versus school attendance. And the reason a lot of districts start with the district-wide is because truthfully it depends on size, but it's also a very economical study for districts to say, hey, we haven't done one in a while, or we look at the state of Texas, and developers are looking at the state like it's a gold mine for building houses. Are we having anomalies that we should really drill down on? So with that, the methodology that we use to project enrollment is called the cohort survival factor. And that's really the analytical side of things and looking at what is the likelihood that a student progresses from one grade to the next. And so, as an example, what are the, per grade level, what are the chances that we have 100 first graders, how many kids make the second grade? Is it 99? Is it 101? Is it more or less? And so what we're doing is we're actually absorbing residential development, we're absorbing transitions in demographics, in employment. So if somebody comes to us and says, hey, we're actually looking to build 100 homes, and you're going to get 500 kids from those 100 homes. That's theoretical, right? So we really want to look at it from more of a proof in the pudding type of analysis. It says, if you have X number of building permits built, we have X number of live births within our boundaries, how many kids are we actually seeing? And so that's what the live birth, or the cohort survival factor really captures. Our second direct input is what I often refer to as our minor leagues. They're not ready to hit their ball yet, but they'll be coming soon. And that's our live birth counts. So we have the last 5 years historical live birth data based off the resident of the mother. So if the mother lived in Bay City, but she went on vacation for some reason at 9 months pregnant, and she's born in Houston or Austin or Dallas, they're still tracked back to our school district. So we're able to acknowledge what the incoming pre-K kindergarten classes are going to be. From there, we'll look at examining the district's housing, what number of building permits have been issued within our city limits, as well as the county, to see if there's some sort of anomalies, some slowdown or pickup, because housing does have a large component. Just ask my wife, she sees an empty bedroom and just automatically thinks the kids should go there. I have a different opinion, but it's okay. And then we look at census trends. What is the population of our school-age kids? How the job industry driven historical enrollment, what's it look like in the future? And so that's really where more of the art side of the enrollment projection comes in, and how we, influence what we think is going to happen in Bay City over the next 10 years. So again, just a quick little synopsis of the methodology. As you see there, we have 100 kindergartners, and we have to pick up 105 first graders. We had a cohort survival factor of 105%. So it's a really unique way to look at enrollment and our grade by grade cohort survival. So we can see, are we gaining kids in certain areas? Are we losing kids at certain areas? And then trying to understand why that may be. Is there something programmatic that we're not offering that other districts are, and therefore we're losing them? Or are we getting an influx of kids, like for Bay City, we see a large influx coming in 7th and 8th grade. So why are we picking up those kids, and are those trends going to continue to happen? For Bay City, you can see here, this is a 10-year or 15-year look back at our historical live birth data. So you can see the last 5 years outside of 2018, we've been steadily increasing from what we saw from 2006 till 2013. And that's going to have a pretty large influence on how we see our projected enrollment moving forward. One of the things that we do, and I'll touch back at the end, is, on a yearly basis, we'll go back and look at how our enrollment projections measure up to what actually came to fruition. A lot of folks have different opinions on whether COVID was going to mean that parents were going to be home a lot, therefore a lot more live births, or we're going to be home a lot and there's going to be no births. Mom and dad couldn't stand each other. And so we'll look back at some of those larger influences that we have on a yearly basis to see how they're measuring up with whether it's the recommended high or low enrollment projection. The next piece here is you'll see we've got the historical data for building permits, and this is data that the counties are required to submit. And so, we did see a little bit of a decrease in 2020, but some of that could be reporting issues, so that's what we'll continue to monitor it with COVID. Hadn't had any experiences like that. We did have quite a significant drop off, especially at the county level. We had about 4 years of over 100 building permits pulled, dropped down to about 23. We're about 4 through 2021 at this point. Next is the school age population estimates. As you'll see here, the last 10 years, but I'll show a quick snapshot of our enrollment. Been a little bit of a steady, but not too much decline. We're looking to see the next 5 years a lot younger population within our boundaries. So we're looking to increase pretty much across the board, all the way from age 0 through age 15, in terms of number of student-age kids that live within the district boundaries. The map on the right is where you can see kind of a heat map of where the growth is going to happen. It's pretty, I would say, a standard projection or standard looking map for a district of y'all's size and location, where a lot of our schools in the older downtown portion of the city exist. We're seeing those blue areas, which represent a decrease in the number of school-age population, versus the red areas that are on the outsides, more housing, that's typically more of a location for younger families and higher numbers of school-age kids. Next is something I want to include for you all just as a monitoring tool. as this can have given the size of our district and the number of transfers in versus transfers out, can have an impact on staffing and facility usage, is that, the last couple of years, we've seen a much larger transfer out rate than we have transfer in. And so, whether we're building new schools, instituting new academic programs that are drawing those kids back, that's something that we're very focused on as we move through the next couple of years, because that could have a big impact on our projections. Given the sustained ratio of transfers in versus transfers out, that's what we projected moving forward for the next 10 years. So before I get into the historical versus projected enrollment, any questions from the board regarding kind of the methodology and the input side of how we get to the outcomes?
You said that y'all were estimating that a lot of younger people were going to be coming into the districts over the next 5 years. Were y'all using something in particular that's driving the younger people to come here?
Yeah, so it's a look at really the live births and the age of the average resident of the city is trending downward for Bay City. So that's why we have about 600 school-age population growth over the next 5 years in terms of total available kids who could attend Bay City ISD.
Do you feel like building permits are a good indicator for enrollment growth? I'm looking at that number and living in this town. There's not 100 new builds being built.
So on the county side, or?
Isn't that a bit of a misleading?
So on the county side, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
So the county is something that we look at because if it's happening around us, maybe not when we look at the 23 that we had last year, if it's happening around us, is the propensity for it to come here, right? That's one of the things that we often hear back from whether it be boards or community members is everywhere around us is growing, we're gonna be next. And so when you look at the historical building permits for the county, it stayed about on par. So I don't expect to see like Sugar Land, creeping down into Bay City in terms of there's a belief or a statistic out there that more homes are going to be built off I-35 over the next 10 years than the rest of the country combined. And so there's a lot of cognizant concern about is our district going to see development. And so when you're seeing it pretty steady, then that's not necessarily something we are concerned about in terms of massive growth or population booms that we would need to accommodate in our classrooms.
You say building permit, is that for building the entire house? Because you can pull a building permit and flip a house, so the market prices go down, and people buy houses and flip them. It doesn't mean there's new housing in the area.
Correct. So the building permit is on a new build. It's on, or there could be if you're going to go over a certain size of an addition, but then that captures a bedroom most of the time. So you want to kind of try and capture those as well. Because most of the time 3 bedrooms, 2 kids kind of philosophy. And we also we do look at the average home price as well and the number of bedrooms in those homes because there's a correlation between the number of kids we see and the maturation of the home. So when you do see, we started seeing, if you're looking at this graph, where we were staying pretty constant around 23, 24, 40, and then the county was growing immensely, then you would want to have a more keen eye on how the building permit started to influence the base of the ISD, understanding the home prices and the number of bedrooms, and then understand the maturation of the house. We often talk about population shifts because, where I grew up, my mom had these, Halloween maybe to hundreds of kids. Now there's 5 maybe that come through the neighborhood, right? Because people are staying in their homes longer. And so we really want to capture the life cycle of that home when it comes to planning and understanding staffing and facility needs.
The number for 2021 was very low, which is expected. But I think that's going to continue on for a while just because you got to take out a lumber to build a burn house with plastic lumber right now.
Yeah.
So did y'all take that into account? Because I know people that are trying to build right now, they can't. So, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, So when we actually do is, we're gonna go with a recommended enrollment projection as trends continue, but what we do is we prepare 4 different actual enrollment projections for a district. And so if we start to see lowering, like housing permits pulled, and we see lower live births happen, we'll work with staff as to, with the trajectory of what line to follow. Off the bat, you look at the recommended projection, it's kind of a baseline. Most people, when they look at facilities, a conservative projection is the high, and if you're in, budgeting planning, you look at the low number, right? Because that's the conservative perspective on that side. So the projections, high, medium, low, are tied to different cohort and building permit inputs. And so when we check back in on an annual basis, we're following different trend lines. The next 5 years, though, is where the confidence interval is 98, 99% in the projection. It's after that where we kind of have it go down a little bit with the live birth data not being available.
Do you take into account homeschooling at all? Because there's been a lot of discussion about homeschooling and COVID and, transmission of schools and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's actually something we've talked to the staff about, and homeschooling records are not the easiest to obtain. It's not something that we're made readily available when you're projecting enrollment. And so actually when we look at your recommended enrollment projection, we kind of brought kids back, not just saying everyone who didn't attend last year is going to jump right back into a classroom again next year. And so that's one of the reasons we really want to relook at it again next year, which is not a cost to the district, is to see what those return to school in-person trends actually are. And so we actually brought the kids back at not 100%, but at 75 and 85 and 95%. Because we do know there's going to be some folks, especially at that kindergarten, pre-K, first grade level, that, it's easier for maybe parents to stay home or work from home now and be with those aged kids. So they may not be as big of a rush to bring them back for kindergarten or first grade.
About like pre-K and private daycares. I mean, if enrollment is up to those, you could expect an influx of students coming into your lower levels.
Correct.
Are you able to track those, or?
That's really the live birth data, is seeing the percentage of live birth data. Historically, what amount of kids that are born at 10 pre-K or TK or early childhood development centers. And so we keep that, you have a pretty standard or flat trajectory on that. But if we do develop a new program, for example, or a new facility dedicated to pre-K, that can, be something that would recommend maybe doing an updated projection down the road. So what we have here is just historical enrollment. Mentioned back in 2011, we were at 3,769 kids. And then in 2021, we had dipped to about 336 kids, 3,536 kids. And as you see, one of the things I like to do is kind of color code this graph so you can see the matriculation of the cohort survival factor and the smaller classes working its way through the system. And as you can see here, we kind of have a smaller class size that's working its way through the graduation right now. And so for Bay City, the recommended enrollment projection has us remaining pretty flat, but over the next 10 years, getting about 100 kids bigger, and kind of returning to where we were in 2011, 2012. But pretty minimal growth, so nothing right now should be concerned about facility-wise, space-wise, as long as the district can house their kids. And then quickly, kind of see here, our live birth data is getting larger, the births are. So you can see right there, actually, where that smaller live birth data works through the system, and how we have some smaller class sizes due to COVID and smaller live births that are going to work its way through all the way through 2030 and 31. And here's a graph for you all that's kind of demonstrating where we were historically, and here's where we are moving forward over the next 10 years. And where our different class sizes are working their way through the system, larger and smaller. Smaller obviously being the blue color, it's supposed to be blue, and then the red is our larger class sizes. So just a couple things to consider. If you're moving boundaries, if you're closing schools, you annex in different pieces of property, if we see spikes or changes in interest rates and unemployment trends are all big factors in enrollment. Unfortunately, we had to add pandemics here, plan to not build housing. And so any of those things that occur at a district level that the board is aware of are reasons for us to kind of go back and reevaluate the trends and see where you all lie to see if that's any big changes in what your enrollment's in. Open that to any questions.
Trustee, any questions or comments? Dr. Scott, you want to say anything on this one?
First of all, thank you for the presentation. Just wanted to give the board some quantitative data, some research based data as we continue to talk about student enrollment, where kids are going. It gets the perception that we're having lots of kids leave us, and really want to present you all once again with the data that's in front of us, look at some trends, so we can start making some informed decisions, not just for today, but 2 years from now, 3 years, 5 years from now, programming, the offerings that we actually have. And that's pretty much it. Just wanted to see if the trustees had any feedback for us, or have a discussion around what actually impacts what's going on in our school district with enrollment.
I think it's definitely worth having a conversation. So the last graphic you said was, in 10 years, we'll be where we were 10 years ago.
About that, yeah, you're a little bit less than that 3,700 number. So our enrollment's supposed to return over the next 10 years to where we were in 2011, 2012.
And does your study identify how we lost so much population and where it's coming from, and so we can identify actions to take to try to maybe not return to where we were 10 years ago? We'd like to get back there sooner.
Yeah, so I mean, some of it is a return to the live births, as you'll see here, right? We had a decrease, the cities, and the full report, and there'll be a lot of copies of, you can see we had an aging population for 5 years. There's been a little bit of a reverse in younger families and younger folks moving in or being part of the big city boundaries. And then there's just been an uptick with, as to be expected, we're seeing this kind of across the state. Through 2013, coming out of the recession, is when families started having a lot more kids. And so that's going to be a big reason as why, we're growing again. It's across the state from 2007 to 2013. Families were having a lot less kids coming out of the recession and having a little more resources, employment, and funding.
But not across the state. I mean, because there are other districts that are growing.
Correct.
And I can't force people to have live births. But, there's things we can do to make the district more attractive. So are there any other identifying factors other than live births that we can identify from the study for the reason why we've had such a decrease, why it'll take us 10 years to get back there?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing and why I wanted to include it is, and some people are very uncomfortable covering, is the internet, the transfer of income is transferred out. Looking at that for you all, it's a bigger number. Some of my colleagues, they don't include it. It's an uncomfortable conversation sometimes, but I think it's important data for you all to understand. And so, now that you may have already known it, but if we want to get our enrollment up, when looking at your cohort survival factors, we lose a lot of kids from 8th to 9th grade. So we get a lot of them back, but they're exiting at the high school. And there's 2 districts where we're losing a lot more of our kids. And so understanding what programs are offering there, is there just curb appeal to the school, are they newer? And trying to understand, those are the 2 biggest questions I'd ask is in terms of offerings to students and why they're electing to go somewhere else. And that'll, looking to gain enrollment, because unfortunately, from a business perspective, more students is better from funding perspectives. And so, trying to decipher exactly where those kids are going. I know we're working with staff on some sort of exit survey. We're trying to get copies of that for you all to say, hey, if you are leaving, what are you leaving for? Try and get more of that data. So we're trying to gather that and get to your staff right now.
So a couple of things. One, did you factor in any of the industry changes here?
Yeah, so industry is not a direct input, but it's something that we look at to see what kind of how the industry changed and evolved over the last 10 years to the point that it's affected enrollment. And since we remain pretty flat, even though there's been changes in wage scales, it hasn't really had that much of an effect. But there could be obviously things moving forward that drive that growth.
Okay, so, and then you made a point about the programs. There's not a school district within 60 miles of here that has the programs that we have, the offerings. So that's not it.
Yeah.
Unless parents are looking for the best programs and the best education, so that's not it. So I think maybe a question that's been posed and it's not being posed now is, what other perceptions are out there about our school district? Let's just be frank about that. That's what that's the elephant in the room. What other perceptions are driving kids away from the school district?
Yeah, and that's when I'm saying for the programs, that's a first step that we always start when they're on any strategic planning mission, right? Or trying to identify what some of those things are. I mean, my programs could be, CTE, it could be football, it could be, again, I don't know, again, we have to study what you all have for this.
Sure.
It's just the first, like you said, this study often prompts a lot of questions for districts to answer, right? And so when we look at, typically what's driving it, it could be that, we're working with a district right now where the neighboring school districts beat their football team 65 years in a row. That's actually what happened. And so the kids are going there. Now, they've got a band in a performing arts program that does really, really well, but it only brings 10, 20 kids football drives.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then how to facilitate support all of that. Is it the weight room, or is it they're just the curriculum of what the aesthetics of the school is? Those are often things maybe that, again, new schools obviously see a return maybe that bump from return on the transfer rate traditionally. Newer or modernized, types of projects. That's something, if you all have questions and we, work with Dr. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, Lisa, feel free to bring them our way and we can continue to analyze it further.
Do you have analysis of districts that have seen spikes in increase and things that they've done, like maybe a library of resources, like some sort of public campaign to advertise early college, high school, and that drives in, right, or whatever?
Yeah, we could send that information to you all. I mean, quite surely that's what we do as a firm, the enrollment and demography is one side of it, but the soup and nuts is really taking a district and saying, from a business perspective, how do we make our district most appetizing so that all of our kids stay here? It's not about that's competing to take anyone else's kids, but we want to keep all of our kids. And so where are our deficiencies through an assessment process? How do we get it back? And community engagement, stakeholder involvement is a big component of that. So I can be more than happy to send you all some things that districts have seen and done to return to, kind of balance out that transfer in, transfer out rate. But again, ideally, most of it, what's good is when in and out kind of equals the same thing.
In your study, did you see where the students were transferring to? Because if they're going out of state, there's probably nothing we could have done to keep that student here. But if they're going next door, then there probably was something we could have done.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the report. I mean, I can pull it up and tell you right now if you want, or, would you like to do that? It's up to you all.
I think it's something that needs to be discussed.
Yeah. Sorry.
And you said that y'all are now collecting like the exit surveys and trying to get it back.
We're trying to work with staff to, and that was something that you all had access to. So we're kind of looking for districts we've worked in the past for current exit surveys. I mean, sometimes they're very hard to do, admittedly. But if you can get some data, it means more than others.
Yeah, and I just think that as far as like.
Is that at least, I haven't sent you that yet, have I?
I'm sorry,
I haven't sent you the exit survey yet.
no, not
Okay.
yet.
I just think as far as, building through kind of, marketing campaign, I think that would be good data as well, as far as, a lot of things.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it here.
Do we currently have an exit survey, or we are working to get an exit survey?
We're working to get one, yes.
So we've never had one historically.
No, we have the traditional TDA form that the
Right.
parents fill out, but
Right.
it does not have an interview process where the administrator interviews the parent.
It's in the study, I think I looked at my car. I'm gonna look at that, and but I can email it to you, and it's included. There was 2 districts that off memory, I know one was. Training front. So, yeah, there's 2 that are the main ones, and then I can follow up with staff and.
Are they in the county?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Talk about side A and that way.
I need to hear the names again, I apologize, but like, yeah. There's 2 districts that about over 100 kids each are going to, and that's been pretty historically consistent.
And it's been pretty consistent at a certain rate.
This is under K through 12, it doesn't break it down per grade, but we can take that exit rate and see where we're losing kids, compared to where we're gaining kids. Like 7th to 8, we get a lot of kids back to high school for that middle school, and then we lose them again at high school. It may not be the same kids, but that'll be in the breakdown for the report style factor.
What'd you say? Goes through 5th.
So we would gain those, and that Gorda is only at
That Gorda goes through
we
8th.
gain all those students, so that makes sense when we gain them junior high. Yeah.
So it sounds like we'll follow up again. It's in the report, but we'll make sure that you all have that information.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate the time. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
You,
Thank you and drive safe.
Well, then, thank you all.
Okay, item 5, Bay City ISD pay system maintenance. Presenter is Keith McLemore with TASB HR compensation consultation HR services. I believe we have Keith on our Zoom meeting. Keith, if you want to unmute yourself, or y'all can unmute him. There we go. Let's see if we can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
His name's flashed, but I don't hear him. Keith, if you can hear us, just give us a brief minute. We're working on something. Tell that.
Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
He says he can hear us. Can you hear me? No. You can hear us? No. Well, while he works on that, I'd just like to say that I think that last presentation was really interesting. It's definitely some information that we should dive in on, and it's uncomfortable conversations that cause the change that really matters. So I don't care how uncomfortable it is to see and hear the numbers. I mean, those are the conversations that we have to have.
It was nice to, a lot of us had certain suspicions that to be able to put grade levels at it and numbers behind what the feeling that you're getting is very nice.
And finding things that you can control. We can't control our birds, but we can control how we present ourselves to the public, how we interact with the community, and the programs that we offer, which we've done phenomenal. Oh, well, wait, I've got a letter here from the Bay City High School, Bay City Junior High swimming team, saying thank you
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I think it's more effective right now, but I was gonna just mention one thing. I know you were talking about increasing our efforts and with a focus on retaining students. We actually just did a big study in conjunction with a company called Vernon Gray out of San Antonio to develop a comprehensive marketing strategy focused on retention and focused on making sure that we can that's what let you know we're also aware of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm here and ready.
Can you hear us, sir?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you.
Perfect. There is an echo, so I will probably speak slowly. I don't know if it's possible to, probably not possible to mute me. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. What we're seeing here is, hopefully you can see my first slide. My name is Keith McLemore. I'm a compensation and HR consultant with Texas Association of School Boards. And last year we did a pay system study for everybody. And what we did this year is we have come back and we're doing a pay system maintenance. What that means is we are doing realigning your pay structure midpoints to market values and rebuilding your teacher structure. And the results are going to be presented here today. And just let me know if there are any questions or if y'all don't see something as I move forward. All right, so the pay studies process is the same like it was last year. I can't believe it was a year ago. I was out there presenting before everything happened. Y'all were my last board meeting, so it's crazy how the year has gone. But this year we collected the pay data from the school district and had a kickoff meeting with district leadership. And after we finalized peer districts, we moved on to gathering the market data and matching common jobs. And then the third step is to align your the Bay City ISD pay structures to market values and then adjust employee pay. Here you can see the peer group. It was virtually unchanged from last year, and specifically we're looking at your teachers, administrative professionals, and the non-exempt group. Those are auxiliary clerical paraprofessionals. The asterisks, if you notice those there for Needville, Palacios, Tidehaven, and Van Vleck, they didn't participate in our survey this year, but we did reach out and get their teacher hiring schedules so we could use those for the teacher comparisons at least. Here's a quick slide showing total experience of current teachers out of the 244 teachers and librarians there in the district. The average total experience is pretty much right in line with the state average. Y'all are at 11.5 years. The state average is 12, so nothing extraordinary here either way. Just wanted to show you the experience breakdown. Pretty good looking distribution. And this is a look at your new hires for the year. There were 47 teachers and librarians brought in this year, and you can see close to 3/4 had 0 years of experience. And you can see the other breakdowns there. A little heavier on the 0 experience than I'm used to seeing, but that is a small sample size and can definitely vary pretty drastically from year to year based on size. So let's get to the meat of what we want to talk about today. So we're going to look at your compensation and how it compares, the pay, how it compares to market this year. And we'll talk about teachers first, and then we will move to the non-teacher groups. But the good news is y'all made improvement. The board adopted the pay increase last year, and the structures changed. And in a rare thing, the market didn't shift that much. The market shifted a little over 1%. Normally it's 2 to 3%. And so districts like Bay City that were, adopted a increase were able to gain some ground on the market. So this is basically looking at your teacher hiring schedule, years 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20. The orange represents Bay City ISD's current hiring schedule at those years. The blue represents market values. Last year, y'all were underneath the orange, the market values at almost, I believe, at least 4 out of the 5 points. And this year, you can see you're exceeding market. You're more competitive at all but one. Only 1 point are you below market. That's at 5 years. So this was a good news. The district has made gains on the competition. This year, we're anticipating the market we did a straw poll sort of survey about 2 weeks ago, and 600 districts participated, and it looks like they are expecting to do between 1.5 and 2% increases statewide, just to kind of give you an idea of what the market will look like as far as shifting for next year. This next slide is showing the same exact data, except for it is showing you in just the dollar figures. So Bay City, you can see up there is at the top. Each column is a point on your hiring schedule, 0 years, 5, 10, 15, and 20. And we have a new data point here, your average salary versus the market. And it's good news all around that you can see the market median is that, I guess, the third row there. The second row from the bottom, that's the percentage difference from market. You can see your starting rate is 100% of market or equal, which is fantastic. That's where you want to be. Districts can either lead market, match market, or lag market, and y'all are right at market there, which is great. 2% below at year 5, and then it's all 100% or above across the board here. 10 years, you're right at market. 15 years, 2% above, and 20 years, 4% above. And on average salary, y'all are 1% above market. And beneath that, you can see the dollar differences. So you made some good strides this year, and are to be commended for that effort. I know y'all are probably happy about that. So let's look at the teacher add-ons. This is just a handful of the most common teacher add-on stipends that are out there. Last year we did do a stipend, an extra duty stipend for the district, but this is just those teacher add-ons. And you can see for the most part, y'all are Bay City's competitive for the most part. The master's degree is right at market value, $1,000. Secondary math and science, that was brought up. I believe that was increased over last year, and it's at $3,000 for secondary math and science. That $4,500 market figure is a little misleading because only 2 out of your 8 peer districts reported one of those. So statewide, it's $3,000, right on the nose. So basically, statewide, $3,000 is exactly with the market value there for math and science. Special education, self-contained, you are really strong there, $3,000 versus $1,500. And for bilingual, you match market, 4,000 versus 4,000. So good news there as well to go along with your teacher salaries. Let's go on to your non-teacher groups. And what you will see here is the administrative professional pay group, the clerical paraprofessional, that's going to be your accounting clerks, payroll clerks, administrative assistants, etc. Instructional aides, and then auxiliary is the the bus driver, custodians, maintenance folks. So you can see across the board you're approaching market or exceeding market. For administrative professional, employee pay is 1% above market. For clerical paraprofessional, 2% below. Same for auxiliary, 2% below. And for pay grade minimums, which we like to be sure you're competitive at for those hourly, non-exempt jobs, clerical paraprofessional, right at market value. And for auxiliary, just 1% below. And so when we deliver your new pay structures this year, the idea is to keep those market rates for the starting rates market competitive, and we also want the midpoints for the non-teacher pay structures to be competitive. And on the far right there, you can see that the benchmark jobs. That's is just showing you how many jobs were compared for each of those 3 categories. So good news there as well. And these will be the recommendations, which are pretty standard. Being that this was a maintenance project, we don't dig quite as deep through everything like we did last year. This is more of a, like I said, as a maintenance. We just want to realign your structures to market and get your teacher hiring schedule back aligned with market if possible. And so recommendation 1 is to implement these realigned pay structures, and which includes strong starting salaries. And as I mentioned, the midpoints are realigned with market value. Recommendation 2 is to adopt a general pay increase, or GPI, to maintain market position. And you'll notice there are 3 models there, so that you'll have choices as far as what you adopt, hopefully. And just want to point out for the teacher structure, the way it works is the general pay increase is calculated as a percentage of market median salary. And so what that means is all continuing teachers receive the same dollar amount for the same year of service. And for the other pay groups, the general pay increase is calculated as a percentage of the employee's pay grade midpoint. And the reason that's important from a compensation perspective and why this was adopted last year is three points probably are good to make here. Number 1 is if some districts still will do percentage of base pay, which means if I make $50,000, and the district adopts a 2% increase, I get 2% of 50 versus someone else doing the same exact job as me. If they're making 70,000, they're going to get 2% of that, and that creates a disparity where the people who are already making more money, it exacerbates the problem, and it creates a disparity there where the people who are making less keep getting compressed in their pay ranges, and those making more get closer to the maximum. So by doing the same increase for everybody, you avoid that. It also helps you provide a market competitive pay increase every year. It's market based because it's based off of market, because we build your midpoints and your structures and align your midpoints with market. And finally, the idea is for internal equity, that's the equity between your current employees. Everyone doing the same job is being rewarded for the same year's work. So that's what was adopted last year, and we just want to keep recommending that, of course. Recommendation 3 is to provide adjustments to address market differences and maintain equity. That's some pretty fancy language, but basically it just means we want to be sure you bring people up to at least the new pay grade minimums. And there are some market equity adjustments in there, just a handful for jobs that fall substantially below market values. We're wanting to push them through their pay ranges a little bit. Teacher pay equity adjustments are very key, especially after House Bill 3. What that does is it looks at what someone who basically could go be a teacher again, someone who's SBEC certified, a assistant principal, a principal, counselor, and it will make sure that they're making at least what they could if they were to return the classroom on a daily rate basis. And finally, placement scale adjustments are That's a fancy word term for, in the hourly pay groups, the non-exempt groups, auxiliary and clerical paraprofessional, high turnover, multi-incumbent jobs like instructional aides, custodians, bus drivers, those pay grades, we do a schedule. We basically align pay with experience up to a point, just to maintain that internal equity for those folks, because those are high turnover, high incumbent positions. And it helps with equity, retention, and recruitment. Number 4, we are recommending considering alternatives to granting GPI to those whose pay exceeds the pay range maximum. It's never popular to hold someone at their current rate if they're above the pay range maximum. And so we just like to offer alternatives there, because it is the best practice, but we understand it's tough to do that. But you can either maintain their current pay, and eventually their pay ranges will catch up back up to them, or you can grant 1/2 the general pay increase, or you can provide the full amount in a lump sum payment. So there are options, but a lot of districts will just grant everyone the pay increase as it's passed. And so let's get to the cost here. The last few slides here are number intensive, but basically what you see here is Model 1. That is a 1% general pay increase for teachers and librarians. You can see the general pay increase amount there, $141,000 and some change. The adjustments are for schedule adjustments to keep you all aligned with market values. And you can see the total out there to the right. So basically the same things going on. You can see the costs for the breakdowns for the other 3 groups. Bottom line is Model 1 carries a 1.3% budget impact. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner there, the adjustments, the general pay increases come out to $328,000 and some change, which is a 1.3% budget impact. And I promised you, I didn't promise you, but I told you last year, once we fix a lot of stuff, the budget impact lessens over time. And so you're seeing that already, where we're calling this is a 1% budget or a 1% general pay increase, and we're much closer to 1% budget impact. So that just helps you know you fixed a lot of things last year. Model 2 is a 2% general pay increase. And you can see the breakdowns there. I'll just cut to the chase, where the total cost impact of this is $556,000 and some change, a 2.2% budget impact. So once again, very, very near the general pay increase percentage. And Model 3 is a 3% general pay increase, and the budget impact there is a little over $800,000. It's $808,000, and or a 3.2% budget impact. So I know that was a lot shorter than last year. I did some other stuff and talked about some other things, but if I can hear you, I'd be more than happy to take any questions if you have them, or get back to the district if y'all have some questions after the fact. But feel free to ask away. If I can hear you, I'll answer.
Can you hear me, Keith?
Yes, sir.
Does any trustee have any questions for Keith?
Does it?
You said number 2 was the one that you recommended last year?
And I apologize. I can't hear the trustee.
Yes, recommendation number 2.
Still talking to Mark.
Was it recommendation number 2 is what you recommended last year?
I apologize. I'm still unable to hear. Let me try to turn up my microphone a little bit more, or my headset.
The question was, did you recommend number 2 last year? This skill number 2 or option number 2?
I can hear you much better, Dr. Scott. Thank you. Last year, I believe y'all adopted, was it the 2% general pay increase last year?
No, it was actually
a Model 3 that he presented, and it was actually a 4%.
4%.
4%. Okay.
Been pretty aggressive over the last couple of years to make this progress.
So what is the 3-year one? What have we done for 3 years in this area? Is it 4
Lisa.
and we're proposing?
So prior to last year, it was a 3% raise, described as he did a while ago, where it wasn't to the midpoint.
Okay.
where he talked about the disparity being, happening between, yes. So last year, we hired him to come do the study. We went through these recommendations, and he explained how we could close some of the gaps, and there would be adjustments, as well as trying to get us to market. And then the board approved the 4%, it was Model 3, but it was the 4% raise that really improved all this.
And the year before that, we were creative without contacting, we actually just took the districts around us, found the gaps. We gave them half of what the gap was plus a percentage that year. So we were really aggressive that year as well.
Thank you, James, I forgot that.
Yeah.
And then there was still though, because that only dealt with the teacher's pay scale.
Yeah, I think
So the outliers got the
Right.
3%.
Which is why we
It was right.
commissioned
And
Kathy to help us
we
fix
called it
all
right
this.
sizing.
We called it right sizing at the time. We were trying to get,
Trying to
more
do this.
competitive with teachers in the other surrounding districts.
So we were losing teachers in a certain year, like 6 years in, and then they went to this district, or 10 years in, and they went to this other district. And so we tried to fix all those gaps, and we made up a lot of difference. And then we commissioned them, and they helped us fix the whole system, so, but we're close.
Well, it looks like the work that has been done, I mean, if you look at the teacher's market graph, which was one of the very first, the only place that we're below is that 5-year mark, but we're way above market value when you hit the 20. So the work that y'all done is worked, like what has happened previously. I would say for this year, we really need to focus on what makes sense with our budget. Are we needing desperately to jump, or can we do something on a more conservative side and still be where market value is?
Right, and to your point, and just for the new board members who haven't gone through a budget cycle yet, these will be plugged in to a budget. So we'll have a budget, and Rick will go over it, but it'll show the general budget, and then it'll have option 1, 2, and 3 at the top, and then an option with no raise, right? And it shows the impact of the budget, and it shows the impact to the general fund, and are we adopting a negative budget or a positive budget? So we're not deciding tonight, but these numbers will be plugged into a spreadsheet, and you'll get to see the impact to the district for each decision.
Do we have any numbers on, so for the past 2 or 3 years, we've increased teacher salaries trying to retain more teachers. Have we lost fewer teachers over that time? Has this actually been working? Or is there another issue on why teachers are leaving besides pay?
So I'm not really sure that teachers were leaving because of pay. I don't have that data unless someone else in the room does. I think we just looked at the pay scale and we made some assumptions about what could keep teachers here. We also wanted to become competitive. And again, it was kind of a raw shot in the dark to say we think this is the reason, even though we don't know that that was the reason. But to even bring our scale up to where we don't want it to be the cause for people leaving. Money, if we continue doing what we're doing, then salaries won't be one of the indicators because we'll be at market value or equal or above our goal. And I don't have the data.
I was just curious on if it made a drastic improvement like that, obviously was something major, or if it was. Do we have exit surveys from teachers whenever they leave?
We do have exit surveys, and we also can just look at basic retention, and compare the data and give you that. But yes, there are questions on the survey regarding pay. There's multiple, it's a typical survey that I think I probably got from TASB, but pay, it's not like it's not gonna jump out. It didn't jump out at me like pay's way over here. There are people moving out of town, just different, some leaving the profession. It wasn't anything that was just glaring.
That was one level though, I don't know, it was somewhere between 11 and 13, to where the difference in pay is like $6,000. Just to go next door. I mean, just assume that to go next door for $6,000, and obviously, and then when we catch up at 20 and above, then you have to keep asking for that. But that's an assumption that we were just making.
And we know why that was then, because remember we discovered that the first year teacher pay had been frozen.
Yes.
1, 2, and 3, level 0, 1, and 2.
Right.
So your first, 1 through 3 is what I call them, but it had been frozen to 40,000 for 3 or 4 years. And then when Dr. Scott came and I looked at that, I thought it was an error. Well, see, as those people traveled, they were already low.
Right.
So that when Keith McLemore looked at it, it was that big hump, but that was corrected already. So what I understood from Keith is that there's not a disparity when he's trying to hit this year in teacher salaries, which we did do last year. There were some teachers that received more to get them, to get it fair. But now we're fixed and it's just a standard.
Hey Keith, so in each of the examples, 1, 2, and 3, you have a 1% raise, 2% raise, 3% raise, and then in the second column is the adjustments. Are those adjustments addressing the 5 years being less than the market, and then certain other areas that were maybe just 0.5% below? Is that what those numbers are?
Yes, very good observation. For teachers and librarians, the vast majority of that 39, like I'm on model 3 here, but that 39,881 is, there are folks who would get more than the general pay increase. And I can tell you exactly where they fall. Give me 1 second here. They are, I guess it's one of the benefits of me being remote, other than the technical issues. So I can take a quick peek at this. But years 2 through 8 would I've just added a little extra, a varying amount between 100 and 600 extra dollars to boost years 2 through 8 a little closer to market, to try to bridge that gap to where ultimately y'all will equally, you shouldn't be more than about 1% away from market, depending on which model that's adopted. So the differences between market at 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20 basically will be uniformly low or uniformly high, you know what I'm saying, versus having dips here and there. That they're, once we align you to market, y'all can decide, do you want to lag market a little bit? Do you want to match market, or do you want to lead market? So long answer to your question is yes, there are some extra adjustments there that vary between 1 and 600. And so some teachers would, teachers with years 2 and 8 through 8 next year would get a little bit more than others.
So to trustee Wes's point, I think the administration should ask that question. Are the pay raises getting you to stay with us, or is the pay raise an incentive for you to remain with the district? And we haven't asked that question, not even put that one forward. It's really a good question for us to ask the teachers, to see what kind of impact the monies are really having on the retention rates.
So like a stay survey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're just throwing more salary in, and they're like, man, besides more salary, I'd rather have more money for education to get another certification or something, that's a lot higher, than I would rather put the money over there,
Good point.
Does the board ever get to see the exit surveys?
No, I've never been asked for it.
Or is that not even something, is that too low where I'm supposed to? I'm just trying to get more, because this is gonna come up in our financial, I'm voting on percentage pay increases, and, I mean, if you can look at it and see if they've obviously not paid something else, then I would dispute how you ended up voting on that.
Yes, and I really think just looking at what we have, it may tell you what you need, what you're looking for, because it's a very extensive survey asking about support, resources, and we can get it to tomorrow morning. If you, it's whatever you think, Dr. Scott.
I think that we need to be intentional about the questions that we're asking in the survey to really get to the point. And maybe we have a place for a narrative, but then also have some other indicators of why people are staying and why they're leaving for the board. So, that's just my point. The information.
they leaving, but I wanna know the same thing with the teachers, you know, like, where are they going, why are they leaving, so we can fix it, we can retain them. Because we're spending a lot of money on training these early teachers, and if they leave in 5 or 6 years, then we're not getting our full investment, you know? I just hate to see that.
Is the 47 teachers or whatever, 0 years, is that a normal, how many hiring here? 47 people?
I would say it's pretty typical. It could range all the way to that, to 60. We've had higher. Fluctuates a little bit.
And so I really, I mean, going forward, and we may have to, so this is really going to be reliable data. That we really get a standard exit survey for the staff. And I mean, some of the indicators that you want to know, is it pay? Is it job dissatisfaction? And what, you know, whatever we want to put those indicators down for the board.
Do we have an end of year survey so we can know what's keeping the teachers here, like what makes them really happy also? So that maybe we can increase, you know, that side of it before they decide to leave?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a survey that actually goes out, but I mean, if we're really gonna do this so the board can actually start making decisions at this level, I really would want the survey to be reliable and not just something that I made up or something that we made up just to get information. So if the board wants to really start looking at this data, and it's going to give you, it's not gonna be skewed, it's going to give you the outcome that you're looking for. So we can have an informed conversation here. I would much rather go back and look at the survey, but I don't mind giving the board what we currently have, but we really need to create a framework for that process, so it's more formal.
I think that would be a good idea, you know, the current ones that we have and the ones that are next, and just so we get a clear picture of the network of our staff.
I also think doing it on paper, not doing an email, where they're doing it on their own time. There's a meeting called, some type of gathering of the staff in every school, and the principal's handing out the survey to them and having them turn it in before they walk out the door. So that way we are really getting a good picture, because people, you'll send an email and they'll say, oh, I'll do that later, and they never get to it. So I do think that there needs to be, it needs to be a paper.
That's our OHI process. We have like somebody who's nominated by the staff to collect all of it, and it is a paper copy. And
Yeah.
they sit in there and do it all together as a team, and then that person brings it to the district.
I think something of that nature, to where it is ensuring that we're capturing everybody.
All right, so a couple of things. One, hopefully we can do it electronically, so we're not killing more trees. But I do believe it should be face-to-face with the building leaders. So that,
They need to be able to feel free to write whatever they, it needs to be
Absolutely.
unanimous. Not unanimous, anonymous, sorry.
When you vote electronically, we just do it application. So we had a survey that they sat down and filled out electronically, it got done. They didn't get to leave and get their email, but I think that's
so,
the marrying of the two ideas.
so create an electronic process, you want them to be able to do it anonymously. And that's okay. Bear in mind that some employees won't fill it out no matter what. It's a small percentage. But I do believe we want authentic feedback from them. We want the principals to facilitate that, but quite honestly, if I'm angry with Estella, I'm probably not gonna give her the worst evaluations, and sorry, Estella. Or I'm angry with the superintendent, I'm probably not gonna sit in front of him and really give him, but when I leave, I would really tear me up. I mean, I would, I was upset. So, I mean, we're standardizing it before they get away from us, because as an organization, we should wanna know the face-to-face, because emailing it to you, yeah, I agree. But, I mean, sitting in front of leadership and then not only the document, but even the dialogue that you actually have with parents and students, I think the process will be beneficial in a lot of ways. So we'll go back and we'll present something to the board, a couple options to the board around how to best do that, so everybody's comfortable.
Any other questions or comments for Keith? Keep you so quiet on that Zoom, I forgot you were still here. So, only thank you for taking the time out of your evening and presenting this to us. It was very informative.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and sorry I couldn't be there in person. Maybe next year for sure if I come back out. Thank you. Have a good week.
Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Okay, that was the last agenda item that describes any final comments. Okay, awesome. So, fun meeting tonight, you know, yeah.
I do have excuse me. Really want to thank the board for engaging in the dialogue that we had at this workshop. Really important information, not only for our development, but also the fiscal responsibility that we all have here. You'll get this information next Tuesday, but I will tell you, as you all know, I'm very conservative when it comes to spending the district's money. And we're gonna have to tighten up our purse strings this year. And we may have to shift some monies and do some things differently, but it's gonna be tight for us. And I know, and again, you'll get this on Tuesday, and I know there's some resources that will be available to us over the next 3 years that we can actually use to offset some of that. That's one more record to say that those funds aren't guaranteed beyond 3 years, and we cannot get the district in a financial constraint that it was in years ago, and no fault of anyone but the state, quite honestly, and then you end up in a river. And we definitely don't want to have to pay employees a lot now, and then having to lay people off. I've gone through a river, and some of the people in this room have gone through. It's very emotional, a lot more emotional than the difference between 1% and 2% and 3% raise. When you having to tell people, I'm gonna have to let you go, and then you're gonna have to reapply for your job. You're talking to 5 people, but they're only 2 jobs. It's not a pleasant conversation. So just want to put that out there for the board as we move forward to this budget season and have the conversation we're gonna have next Tuesday. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Those fun conversations coming up. Tonight was a fun meeting. Came full circle. Got to tour a new facility today and see all of our brand new stuff. And we talked about becoming a better board together with the Lone Star governance, growing our enrollment in our children, and not only that, but actually compensating and retaining our teachers and staff and administrators as well. So I look forward to serving with each and every one of you over the next year. I think we're going to have a really great year, and we can get down into the weeds and get some things done and make this district better. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Trustee West has made a motion to adjourn. Second to the motion.
I'll second.
I saw our hand. Trustee Westmoreland seconded the motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.